Hello, 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 and welcome to a new live stream. Am I audible? Let me know in the comments below if I'm audible. Thank you for tuning in. For all those who've joined, thank you for tuning in. It's Sunday morning over here in Barcelona. I'm pretty sure you guys are excited about this particular live stream, and happy Sunday to everyone. So let's jump right in. The Hey, Pawan, thanks for tuning in. Um, well, in this live stream, it's going to be a little different topic rather than a normal, UI UX topic. Basically, I'm going to talk more about. I'll probably give you a little bit of tips and tricks about like how designers need to have this skill set called as art of noticing. Well, that art of noticing is one of the most important things for a designer to kind of survive today in the industry. Now, this trait often goes kind of haywire where this particular trait is not inbuilt with a lot of designers. Okay. So that's something that I'm going to discuss today, where how does a designer can excel specifically by having this trait of noticing power in their daily life, in their day-to-day activities that they do. So let's jump right in the video. And just to kickstart, I'm just going to wait for like next 20 seconds or 30 seconds for people to join in. And I'm going to just like quickly start this particular thing. All right. If you guys haven't liked the stream or something, you can hit that like button or something such that this stream gets bumped up. I can see there are some 5 people already on the stream. Thank you, Yuvraj. Hello, Yuvraj. How are you doing? All right. All right. So let's jump into the first tip that I would like to give is today, everyone, not just the designers, today, everyone is having a problem of habituation. Now, what do you mean by a habituation problem? We kind of go towards, let's say, in our daily activities, what we do, a lot of things around us gets unnoticed. Why? Because our attention span has reduced a lot. So that's the problem where it actually starts where, people want to grab your attention, right? So imagine you bought a new phone and you open the box or something like that, and you want to directly use that phone, but you realize that hey, the phone is actually not charged. So you see that your motivation for that particular phone was pretty high in the beginning, but it went really low when the phone was not charged. The new phone was not charged. Steve Jobs somewhere kind of found this as a problem. Like, people had this very high motivation to particularly use that phone quickly while they were actually, when they actually bought their first iPhone. They said that, Steve Jobs said that, hey, we are not going to do something like this. We're going to make sure that the iPhone that people purchase is going to be fully charged the moment they remove it from their box. Well, this was a problem which was identified by a particular designer. Well, and now it was kind of solved. So if you look at our daily activities, right? So if you look at our daily activities, and I'll give you an example of what Tony Fadell said. As a kid, right? As a kid, there are these apples, like, when you used to be a kid, you used to just like grab a particular apple and start eat it, right? Because you were hungry and this you can see an apple and you have to just grab a bite, like you have it. But now today people have made that thing difficult. Why? Because you see a small sticker, like a white sticker, a label on top of that, right? And you get super irritated. So what you do is you kind of pull your nails inside and kind of wrap your nails around that particular thing and beat the whole flesh of the apple and remove that sticker and then have it. But it was very difficult in the beginning. It was really difficult in the beginning, right? So quite often, again and again, when you start eating that apple second day or the third day or the fourth day the fifth day, you kind of have got used to it. You will not look for another solution to it, but you got used to it. Now imagine if you would have identified that particular problem. Now that's something that I'm going to discuss today, right? Where you have to get out of that whole habituation problem in your daily life. All right. So when I say this habituation problem, it's more like whatever you do in your daily life, from morning to evening, whatever you do in your daily life, try to observe very minutely, try to get into the details of it, scan that particular thing, and see if it's actually a problem for a lot of people. If yes, try to solve it. And if no, it's okay. You can still try to solve it and see if there are certain various outcomes that can come up. Well, similarly, like I'll give you another example for a habituation problem, all right? Let's say if you're walking down the street, if you're walking down the streets and you are on your phone, right? Today, a lot of people are on their phone and walking on their streets, right? So you realize that there is a bump in between and it completely gets unnoticed. It completely gets unnoticed. And then you kind of topple and you kind of fall down. But the next time when you walk, it's imbibed in your head and it's imbibed in your muscle memory that hey, there's a bump ahead, and then you kind of turn around and start walking. Now you just notice that thing and now you kind of walk around it. You understand where I'm going? Well, that's the main habituation problem where you try to notice it and then kind of imbibes in your muscle memory and you forget it completely. But you don't try to solve that particular problem. That's where designers come into picture, and that's where Tony Fadell, his TED talk is just amazing, right? So I would suggest that you just YouTube Tony Fadell and look at his examples that he gives about habituation problem and the art of noticing, and it's just brilliant. So I just thought that I would like to do this live stream mainly for just for you guys, where you kind of have to have this particular trait, as a designer if you are starting your career, or if even if you're in the middle of this particular career, right? So yeah, that's the first problem that I wanted to address, that you have to notice and get out of this whole habituation loop or habituation cycle or the habituation problem. Well, that's one of the first and the most important things that I would say. Second important thing that I would like to talk about is that you have to look at the problem in a different perspective, right? So let's say I can see a particular lady or a particular guy crossing the road. All right, he's crossing the road, but he is taking a lot of time. All right, he's taking a lot of time, but the signal turns green and all the people, and there's a huge traffic behind who has to wait for that lady or that old man or that old guy to kind of cross the road. But imagine if there was just like a single button at the side of the road, where you just click on it and it makes sure, until unless that particular person doesn't cross the road, this traffic still stays. Lot of countries has solved this particular problem, where crossing the streets, they have made it super simple. But back in India, considering we have a lot of population, it is super difficult to solve that particular problem. Why? Because you have to have that consistency of design, you have to have that thought of solving that particular problem. Today, the whole process of traffic in India, in Mumbai especially, right? We have this whole problem of traffic. It's reached to a certain huge level where you are not able to manage it, right? Now, how do we try to solve this particular problem of traffic? Well, you have to design it in such a way. You have to kind of have that uh, habit of looking that particular problem with a broader perspective. Now, looking at this as a broader perspective is one of the best things to do. Why? Because you look at it from a third person's viewpoint. You look at it from a fourth person's viewpoint. That similarly goes for your designs as well, right? So even if you're designing a mobile app, or even if you're designing a website, right, you need to have like a different sort of perspectives in place. Don't look at it like one biased approach. Hey, I'm going to solve it in this particular manner. Look at it from the third person's perspective. Look at it from the user's perspective, I would say. What's the problem they are facing, not the problems you are facing. That's something that I wanted to talk about, like in this whole point of, look broader at the problem. When I say look broader at the problem, you probably see from, you know far away, saying that, hey, I can see that particular problem happening. How do I particularly try to solve that, right? Well, that's one of the ways to kind of, get into the art of noticing. Like that's point number two, where you look broader at the problem. All right. The third point, which I wanted to discuss, is you look closer at the problem. When I say closer at the problem, you actually take that problem in your hand, scan it down, write it down, like break the problem down, break the steps down. Like if there are, let's say for an application, I'm going to give you an example of an application. Let's say there are 6 to 8 important steps that the user needs to follow. Imagine you break down those steps. And you kind of just give me a second. All right. So yeah, point number three: look closer at the problem. Where I was saying that you kind of have to break down the problem. You have to break down the problem in such a way that if there are 5 to 6 steps in a particular application, how do you try to cut down those problems, right? Such that the user reaches to the solution very quickly. So you kind of go dig deep into the problem. You try to see what are the possible outcomes of that particular problem. Now that's something that you have to notice, you have to list down, you have to dig deep, and you have to actually get into the super user's psychology, right? Where you have to look from the perspective of a user. How is he using this application? How is he actually interacting with your application, right? So that's something that you have to do as a designer, that you have to look closer at the problem and not specifically say like, hey, I think I'll be able to solve this problem in this manner. No, I think you have to provide solutions in such a way that it is important that you try to solve it from the user's perspective and not from your perspective. So I'll give you an example how to look at this at a very closer angle. All right. Edison, like for example, if you look at Edison, or if you look at Steve Jobs for that matter, or Jonathan Eve for that matter, they have tried to solve this whole problem of, touch screens and iPhones and mobile apps and all. It's amazing device, right? Everyone wants to own it, right? It's like they are in. They've made the device so beautiful. They've made the device so lovable. They've made this device so amazing that you want to, like, Steve Jobs says it very clearly, like you want to lick them, right? You want to lick the application, the app icons. It's so beautifully designed. That's the idea of, going to the granular level, the molecule level of the application, or of the problem. That's something that I would like to discuss, which is like, look closer at the problem, because you have to have that microscopic view and scan and analyze everything you see around, right? Right. That doesn't mean that you like go with the binoculars or go with the microscope around. No, you just like, have to have that attention, saying that, hey, these colors are pretty nice, these fonts are pretty nice. Hey, this would have been a little different if this would have been this way. So try to notice that on a daily basis, right? Even if it's a chair, or even if it's a cup of coffee, it's important that you kind of notice, saying that, hey, this is a different color, right? What if it would have been a very brighter color? Would have been different in the room or something like that? Yeah. So you need to have that whole microscopic view sometimes. Not necessarily always have it, but you need to have that microscopic view sometimes for sure. Hey Chirag, thanks for tuning in. Hey Saurabh, thanks for tuning in. Yuvraj, hey, hello. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so I was talking about looking closer at the problem, like you need to have that microscopic view. If you guys haven't joined already or you haven't liked the stream, go ahead, hit that like button just for the algorithm. All right. All right. So I'm just going to brush again those 3 points which we discussed. First was the habituation problem. You need to get out of that loop where you kind of have, imbibed those things right in your head and you just kind of neglect most of the things. That's the first point. Second is you need to have a broader perspective, right? You need to look at it in a different way. You need to look at it from third person's angle. The third problem, which I would like to discuss, is look closer at the problem. Needs have a very microscopic view of that particular problem, right? That's something that you can look into, like break down the problem, do the granular level of it, like the color schemes, the fonts. Like you need to break down that particular problem, right? All right. So the next thing that I'm going to discuss is you need to be curious like a small child, right? Like if you do not have that curiosity to look at that particular problem or break down that particular problem, I think you are not a designer. I think you need to make sure that you are looking at it like a kid, or you are actually visualizing that thing as a kid. And you often see in that, a lot of kids today try to pose like some random possible questions which you've never thought of. Like for example, in the Tony Fadell's video, what he gave an example of, let's say, your mail which is there outside, the letterbox which is there outside, right? And one day he kind of goes and tells his child, saying that, why don't you get me an email which is there outside? And the kid replied, Dad, why doesn't mail kind of inform us the moment it comes? Why doesn't the mail inform us the moment the letter goes inside the letterbox? Why do we have to go and check every time? Now that's something where he kind of figured out that kids have this huge potential of curiosity where they try to pose and ask questions in the randomest possible way, and that's where the whole idea of curiosity comes into picture, right? So the moment we start getting older, right, we lose that whole curiosity of, hey, let's get used to it. Like for example, Instagram's logo, right? You got super aggravated or super angry or super neglected, or I would say you were not happy with the initial logo, right? But now you got used to it. Now you got used to it, and it's one of the biggest applications, and it's one of the biggest, I would say, time consuming application, right? So that's something that they've tried to solve. They've gone to the granular levels. The initial change in the design is always, always, always a problem, right? So that's something that I would like to point out, which is, have to be curious like a small child. Have that curiosity of even the smallest possible thing. Even if you're writing down notes, just put down all your thoughts and ideas into one particular place. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah. The next thing I would suggest is that you observe and look for different patterns. So if you notice today, like everyone is following this particular trend of a notch on a mobile phone. Now that's a particular trend. That's a particular pattern that users are following today. A lot of companies like Samsung, Apple, like MI, a lot of people are actually following that. OnePlus are following that whole notch on the top. Why? Because they want to make sure that they are still in the process of solving the screen problem and the camera problem, right? So they can't get out of it yet. So they're still looking at it as a solution from the different perspective and trying to give you different possible solutions. And then we are the ones who are actually buying it, right? So you have to look and observe for those type of patterns. You have to look and observe for something where those patterns are something that you learn over a period of time. How to observe those patterns, how to identify that this is a particular pattern. Like for example, if you look at um, if you look at like keyboards, if you look at keyboards, there are certain set of patterns for keyboards as well. There is numeric keyboards, there's alphanumeric keyboards, and then there is combined keyboards, and then there is just the alphabet keyboard, and there's a touch bar on the side. So you see there are a lot of patterns around it. But lot of companies have kind of divided this thing. If you see Keychron, if you see Logitech, these companies have kind of solved this particular problem very nicely, where they've given you both of them combined. Some of them have customized, some of them don't have customized. So it's a mix of things that they've given. But if you identify the pattern over here is that they've realized the fact that users want a little bit of customization every now and then. So that's where Keychron came into picture, and they made the whole tactile feedback on the keyboard, right? I would suggest that you can just Google Keychron and just have a look at it, saying that how does it actually work. And even you can also look at Logitech keyboards. They don't have noise. If you type, they don't have that much of noise. But if you look at Keychron, they have like a huge tactile feedback while they're typing. So yeah, that's something that I suggest that you kind of need to have, to observe and look for patterns in design. Another example that I could give you is that everyone on Dribble today, as a UI designer, I'd like to give you an idea is everyone on Dribble today is trying to run behind the idea of creating a landing page for NFTs. Wow, brilliant. All right. But what are you trying to do? Like you're just following the trend, right? Perfect. I think you have observed that particular trend very nicely and trying to make your version of that particular problem and trying to pose a solution to it. Bang on. I think that's a very nice way to look at it. Yes, I think that's the time where you actually observed and looked at the patterns in a nice way. You kind of browse on Dribble, you kind of browse on Behance, saying that hey, um, these are some amazing patterns. I think I'm going to make sure that I'm also trying to make some new version of NFT landing pages, or different sort of landing pages that you try to copy certain designers here and there. So yeah, you need to observe and look at different sort of patterns or the trends that are going on in the market today. Watch other designers closely. That's the next point, right? You have to watch other designers very closely. When I say watch other designers, you have to firstly, what I would recommend is that you completely follow them on all possible platforms. If it's Twitter, if it's Insta, if it's Dribble, if it's Behance, if it's Facebook like, or if it's like a separate website or sort. Make sure you kind of follow all of in that designer in all possible platforms. The reason is the moment you open any of the application, if you see some update from that particular designer, you might get to understand what he is actually doing, right? You might get to understand like, hey, he's building something new today. Hey, he's doing something new today. You might get an inspiration from that, right? You'll be able to notice what he's trying to do. And that's where the art of noticing comes into picture, where you kind of realize that, hey, um, there's a lot of things that are going on in the design world which you still don't know about, right? You can have that FOMO of sorts, where you kind of forget, hey, I want to still be in line with what's going on, what's been creating today, right? So Product Hunt is the website, like they give you a lot of new concepts and new ideas, and launch new concepts and new ideas and test it out with a lot of users. You should check out Product Hunt on almost on a daily basis to see what's come up new, right? So there are a lot of designers who posted their particular solutions. They posted a lot of plugins over there. They posted a lot of websites over there for smallest possible thing. Like for example, Unsplash has solved this particular problem of photography, like free photography for all, right? So you have to look at other designers in such a way that you kind of interact with them on daily basis. Like for example, on Twitter, you have to interact with them on daily basis, where you understand how they are actually talking, or how they are actually working, or what's the design language that they follow, what's the design system that they follow, how did they come up with this particular solution. Try to ask them and pose them questions, interact with them, join a particular community. That I would suggest. Like that's the biggest thing, the biggest asset that you can have. Like a designer next to you, like a mentor next to you, where you understand and notice. Again, the art of noticing. How does art of noticing comes into this particular thing is, you have to see how they work. That's one of the biggest thing that you can learn from another designer, right? So that's the point number 6 that I would like to give you. The last point, and one of the biggest point, which is take a problem at hand and try to solve it. Let's do a small exercise if you can. All right. If You take up a particular problem. Let's say from your morning to evening, you have a particular routine that you follow. But if you identify that, hey, there's this one particular problem that you see, how will you be able to solve that particular problem? You kind of list down those particular things, you kind of list down the problem, you kind of list down the granular details of it. Try to come down to a particular solution saying that, hey, I can try to solve this particular problem in this way. I can try to solve this particular problem in this way. Flip the solutions, flip and see the outcomes. You might be surprised to see that you have solved a particular problem by yourself without any help or without any designer, right? So you need to notice the first important thing is that you need to notice that there's actually a particular problem or not, right? That's one of the biggest things. If there is actually a no, if there's actually not a problem, don't create a problem. That's what I would suggest. But what I'm trying to make you understand is that you need to look at it as a problem. If you see that a lot of people are actually facing it, yes, that is a problem. And then you list it down, look at it from far away, list down the problem statement, try to solve that thing, go granularly deep into the whole process, and give multiple solutions to it. For example, Edison made the whole light thing, electricity thing more than 10,000 times. Right? I think you must have heard this thing for quite some time. But he gave 10,000 attempts. Can you imagine? Like, so, but he said that he had to go right once. So I think that I'd like to leave you with that particular thought. And lastly, I would like to plug in one particular book called as the Art of Noticing by Rob Walker. All right, that's a book that you can probably buy by Rob Walker. So this particular book, all right, this particular book, The Art of Noticing by Rob Walker. It's available on Amazon. All right, I'll probably put the link in the description below. But it gives you some amazing ways to boost up your creativity. Like there are some exercises that it gives you to boost up your creativity. Like if you are facing like a dull time or you're just scrolling and browsing on Instagram thinking, hey, what are you doing with your life? I think this particular book will give you certain, creativity boosters, I would say. Not like, no, you will become Picasso or Da Vinci or something, but yeah, you might end up doing or taking up certain activities that are listed in that particular book. It's some 131 ways to kind of understand and notice different things on a daily basis. That's what he has listed down in this particular book, The Art of Noticing. Now, how can I kind of plug it with my designer friends over here is that, hey, this can help us as a designer in our daily activities, and I think it can boost up the creativity process that we are always in, right? As you guys know that you guys are also designing something, you're designing on a daily basis where you are where I give you a design challenge and you design it, right? But you look at the particular design and just try to ape it sometimes. That's okay. I think you're learning. But you need to also understand how that button is actually looking, how that icon is actually looking. What if I change the font size? What if I change the font weight? What if I change the illustration here? Try to go to that granular level and see and mix and match a couple of things. That's what I want you to learn and get out of this particular stream that I'm trying to talk about. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. If you have any questions now, I think I've ended my this particular stream, which I wanted to say. I'm just going to browse in again what I just mentioned, which is, hey, first is the habituation problem. Get out of the loop. Look at the problem in a broader perspective. Look at the problem at a closer angle, like microscopic angle. Like you have to be curious like a child, right? You have to be curious like a child. You have that mentality of a child, right? You need to start observing the patterns in designs. You have start observing the trends in the design industry. Watch, watch other designers very closely. Like be their friend or follow them or something like that. Take a problem at hand, which is existing right now, and try to solve it and present it to the world. That's one of the best things that you could do. That's pretty much. I think we've already reached like 30 minutes of our stream. I'm gonna push for Q&A. If you have anything, just try to pose in. Post your questions here and I'll try to answer them one by one. I know this stream has been a little different, and this stream has been a little not related to UI and UX, I would say. But I think I wanted to share this particular thing with you, where it doesn't have to be always design, right? It could still be something as an off topic where you kind of discuss more about design as our main forte, which we are more focused on. So yeah, that's something that I would like to question. So learn basically the art of noticing, I would say. I mean, you can get pretty used to it. I mean, it'll definitely come through practice, right? So it's been 10 years that I have been practicing, so I know how to notice quickly. I know how to identify things very quickly on my daily basis, or if even if I'm walking on the streets, or if I'm going in the lift, or even if I'm doing this stream or something. I notice a couple of problems which are there, but I try to solve them in some or the other way. For example, in my last stream, there was no light which was coming properly, if you notice. But I've tried to solve this thing through, like, making the lights a little dim or something like that, because, camera does this thing very nicely where it kind of gives you the whole portrait look and feel, right? So that's something that I've tried to do. But yeah, you need to identify the problem and try to solve it in some way, right? Let's open up for questions. You can ask me anything that you want. I hope this stream was super helpful. I hope this stream, you could learn something from this particular stream for sure. And you can obviously look at this stream later on if you want, because it's definitely going to get uploaded on YouTube. And yeah, all right. I think the last thing that I want to discuss is the PWX Discord server. All right. I think I'm going to put the links in the description later on. You can join the Discord community where we have live UI UX design challenges, and there are a lot of people who are actually doing it. Like, I would like to give like mm, special mentions to Anshuman, I would say, and Pavan Karki, I would say, where they're actually doing some amazing stuff. I think they're pretty close to completing their challenge, so I'm pretty excited to see their work eventually. Yes, pose your questions. I'm looking for your questions. In fact, there are a lot of other books as well that you can, you know, um, read. For example, there is um, book like Hooked. There is book like Design Sprint by Jake Knapp, which I think is one of the amazing books to understand how design um, sprint works, where you have to test your designs for like 5 days and see if it actually works or not, right? So that's something that you can do, where you can read certain books, right? I think you can just make sure that the investment that you're doing for buying these books is something like is more on the lines for your design theory and design practicals, basically. Like, kind of have to imbibe those particular things as your applications in the design, right? So I love to read books sometimes, like, design related books. I like to go to a couple of places to visit, like, especially over here, since I moved to Barcelona. I've been visiting a lot of places over here inside Barcelona, and try to notice, like, the granular possible details. Like, what was the thought behind this particular architecture, or this particular balcony, or this particular window, or this particular color over here. So that's the noticing power that you need to have almost every now and then. But again, it'll get built over a period of time. I'm not saying that, hey, you will get pro into this thing on day one, but I think you can practice, like, for like at least 15-20 minutes, and try to sit right in the middle of the garden or something like that, and try to observe around. Like, try to do that. I think it'll be really cool. All right. I think that's pretty much. I think I'm still open to questions if you have. Just one more small thing. I'm also active on Superpeer. Like, you can book calls with me. I try to help and mentor junior designers where I try to tell them saying that, hey, this UI UX career is something amazing. You can particularly switch to this particular career if you want. And I also try to teach Figma tutorials. Currently, a discount is going on Superpeer. If you want to, book a call with me, the discount is April 50. The code is April 50. It's only valid for uh, this month, I would say. So yeah, you can just like go to superpeer.com/Bhawinworx and you can book a call with me. 50% discount is going on. And I would love to meet a lot of you guys. Like I've already completed more than 7 to 8 calls this particular month, and it was really exciting to see a lot of designers pretty excited about UI UX as their future career. So yeah, that's pretty much. I think I have a particular question by Ruchi. Hi, Ruchi. Thanks for tuning in. Any quick articles or blogs that cannot commit to read a book? All right. I think I understand your question. I think there are certain Medium articles which are there, right? What I'll do is I'll probably push that thing on our Discord server where you guys can actually read it. I'll make sure that certain articles are there right on the Medium. I have a collated list of all the articles which are related to design, how you can look at the problem statement and try to solve that thing in a linear pattern or in a different pattern of sorts. So that's something that I'll do. Thanks for bringing this up, Ruchi, and thanks for tuning in. Do you guys have any more questions, or else we can kind of, call this stream up? Thank you so much, guys. I think this was a wonderful stream, and see you in the next stream. Adios. Bye bye.